Hey, welcome to Chai After Dark. Welcome to Chai After Dark, Shabnam.
Thanks, Ameem. Welcome to Chai After Dark, everyone.
We have a very, very special episode for you today. We are going to be reviewing Netflix's The Roshans. It's a 4-part documentary. It goes through the Roshans, who are a very famous, powerful family in cinema and film and music. It goes through an entire history of their grandfather, sons, and then we ultimately end up with Greek god Hrithik Roshan. Calm down, Shabnam.
Yeah. Bollywood superstar. Hey, this is a Bollywood legacy family, and they're pretty cool, man. This was a total trip down nostalgia lane, and I was loving a lot of it, although I feel like these 4 episodes could have been 3 for sure, and probably 2. It was dragging a little bit in the middle 2 episodes, I think.
Yeah, there was a good amount in these episodes, but just to lay it out, the first episode focuses on Hrithik's grandfather, Roshan Nagrathji. He was an initial music film producer. He probably worked with every major Indian film. Yeah. I don't know if these films were major, by the way, but in the 40s and 50s
they
and
were.
60s, they were, certainly.
Yeah. And famous musicians. And so his name was, like you said, Roshan Nagrath, but because he became so famous and became known as Roshan Saab, they took on the last name Roshan. And so that's why, Hrithik Roshan's father and uncle, Rakesh and Rajesh Roshan, their last name is Roshan, and then Hrithik is Hrithik Roshan. But the thing that was really nostalgic for me about this was that beginning scene when Hrithik Roshan, the Greek god of Bollywood, pops in the cassette tape into his boombox and he starts listening to an old song being sung that his grandfather produced. It was pretty amazing. So that gave me a lot of feels because my dad was total desi Bollywood music head, and he would listen to these old songs, which I didn't know all these songs were produced by Roshan Saab, Hrithik Roshan's grandfather. I knew them as songs sung by Lata Mangeshkar and Muhammad Rafi, and my dad loved Lata Mangeshkar. Mm-hmm. And he would just pop them in. And back in the day, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, I don't think you had as much access to the music sheet notes for some of this old Bollywood music. So he would listen to the tapes and write the music and play his harmonium alongside it and totally zone out. And I remember that as a kid. And so that was super nostalgic of me to hear all these old songs.
Yeah, and the Roshans, when you watch it, it gave me the feels as well. And I think the Roshans themselves needed this documentary to sort of not only show the world that they're a pretty stable family from what it seems like. Of course, everybody has drama, but yeah, your reaction to the songs and thinking about what you and your dad used to listen to, I think that's what they were going through too. I didn't listen to any songs with my dad, but I did get a lot of, man, I should start listening to these songs with Sophie, and maybe in 30 years, she'll realize how important these songs were for Bollywood and Hindustani cinema.
These are bangers of the 70s and 80s.
Roshan Saab actually is the reason why Lata Mangeshkar is so famous, and she passed in 2022. You just referenced her.
Yeah, it's so sad.
I never knew this, and I've been listening to Indian music for a long time. I'm not super well versed on the names and everything, but they do have Asha Bhosle in this series. I looked her up. She's 91 years old today, and
it's wild.
She looks amazing.
Her skin looks flawless in this documentary. I can't believe she's 91.
She looks 68, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe 68.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Early 70s at the latest. And she's with it. Like, she's
Yeah.
quick-witted. She starts singing in the first episode, which is really nice because then they bring on Roshan Saab's music, like from the 70s, and they're singing these songs. The first one of these songs that we're talking about was recorded in like 1949.
Yeah.
And these two sisters were
Crazy.
teenagers singing these
Yeah.
songs. They were like the best of friends. Lata Mangeshkar, like I said, passed in 2022. She never
Mhm.
married. I think it's because she just had this like crazy, wonderful community around her.
बड़े अरमानों से रखा है बलम तेरी कसम ओ बलम तेरी कसम प्यार की दुनिया में ये पहला कदम हो पहला कदम
And Asha Bhosle's still kicking it and alive. So yeah, they're sisters. I never knew that. Hey, let's drop this track right here, actually. Brimful of Asha. It's by Corner Shop from 1997. I love this song.
Nice. But speaking of 70s and 80s, we talked a lot about uncles, and this is like classic uncle music.
Oh, yeah.
And we talked about uncles dating white ladies.
Okay.
So my dad always told me the story about how in the Bay Area, all these uncles would like cook together and all this stuff. So they would go to this butcher in Oakland and they would get the wholesale meat that no one else wanted. So they'd get like feet and brains and they'd make like these desi dishes. So there's a South Asian delicacy of a feet stew, which is called baya. And then there's another delicacy, which is brain curry. And so they would make those and then they would invite every South Asian person
Yeah.
like in the Bay Area to come and have some. And so apparently I found out some of those uncles were dating white women at the time. So they would bring these white women and the white women were like, this is like so good. And they were like loving it. And they had no idea they were eating feet and brains.
Oh, come on. Really?
I swear. Yeah.
I'm very aware. I know what feet and brains are. Baya's actually pretty good. You kind of like suck on the bone and you got to get every piece of meat.
And that's what she said.
Toast. Yeah, exactly. But yeah.
Yeah.
I think like utilizing ethnic food from what culture you're from in the United States is a surefire way to get white women to hang out with you, right? Like,
yeah,
at least
and
hang
it's
out
got
with you.
collagen too. It's good for their skin.
Yeah, it's isn't that where Botox came from?
No, Botox isn't collagen, but collagen's
Isn't
like a
it?
supplement a lot of people take. Botox is a muscle relaxer to prevent you from wrinkling.
Look, I know we're talking about the Roshans, and these guys look great. They're rich, particularly Hrithik. He looks amazing.
I'm sure he's got Botox.
Oh, that's exactly where I was gonna go. And his dad looks great too. He was also a very handsome actor in the 70s before he transitioned into film and would cast his son ultimately. But he had a lot of Botox stuff going on too. Like,
Yeah.
these guys are on film. I totally get it, right? Like we talked about last episode, how we don't want our faces out anywhere, but nobody's asking either. So I don't know who we're saying no to.
Yeah. No, I know, but we do have our faces. If we don't want our faces, we should delete them from our Instagram. But
we just don't look like Hrithik Roshan. We don't look like Priyanka Chopra. We don't look like any of these. Actually, I look like a couple of the older guys. The guys from the 60s
you
and 70s.
look like Rajesh Roshan. Is that what you're saying?
I look just like not the tall, handsome one. The music producer guy. I look just like him. Poor guy too. He was like Rakesh had the ladies. He had the girlies.
Yeah.
I wasn't interested in the girlies. I like to drink and smoke. That's what he said.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, maybe the girlies weren't interested in you. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I don't want to say that.
Yeah, and then he's like, when I did get a girlfriend, I would never introduce her to my brother because he would
steal her.
That's crazy. But then his wife's really hot. I was like, damn, okay, you got a hottie.
And they were not rich and famous when they got married. Both the brothers.
Yeah.
Rakesh and
Rajesh. Rajesh is the younger one that married the hottie, and Hrithik Roshan's dad is Rakesh. You know how I remember that? Hrithik ends with a K, and there's a K in Rakesh.
So Rajesh and Rakesh married their wives before they were rich and famous. Rakesh, he was a control freak. He really wanted to make the best movies ever. He started out as an assistant, then an actor. He became a producer, and then ultimately he became a director in the 80s. He even cast Hrithik Roshan, his own son, in an uncredited role in a movie in
Yeah.
1986. That was his first role. He had 2 roles as a kid before he broke open in 2000. But before we get there was a lot of platitudes and love, and every major Indian celebrity you can think of, other than Salman Khan, does show up in the Roshans to express their gratitude to this family for giving them every opportunity to be rich and famous. So I kind of understand why everybody is, sucking at the power teat, because these people were so powerful. They were like running around making every film you can think of.
Yeah, no, totally. As Priyanka Chopra said, they didn't keep their table small. They kept their table large, and they let me sit on it and help me to become famous so that I could marry Nick Jonas. It's like, cool.
Is that the Jonas Brothers she married? I was watching it and I couldn't remember which one it was. And I don't actually know any of them, so I wouldn't really know. Who is he, the oldest one? How many are there?
He's the youngest one. There's 3. He's the youngest one. So the oldest one's married to a woman who is not famous. The middle one was married to the Game of Thrones girl, and then they got a divorce. And then the youngest one is married to Priyanka Chopra, and he's like 8 years younger than her. And they went to the Ambani wedding, which we have an episode on from way back last summer.
I bet Hrithik Roshan and his uncle and father were there as well at the Ambani wedding. Actually, I don't know that,
I'm sure.
but I would be very surprised if they weren't there.
I'm sure they were. Well, and Hrithik Roshan's mom, do you remember how she talked about her marriage and how that went? She was like, she just came home from school one day and they're like, so we're getting you engaged. And she was like, okay. And she's like, back in that time, she just didn't really think she had a choice, but then she saw him and he was hot. So she was like, okay, cool.
She was super cool with it. And she literally says that he was very, very good looking. So I married him. But yeah, that's how it was back then. If you want to see an alternative view of what we're just talking about, you can check out our Indian matchmaking episode from 2024, where surprisingly, a lot of these people actually get choices now. And back then, there was no choice. Hey, she could have done a lot worse. Ended up with one of the most famous movie directors out of Bollywood of all time. So Rakesh Roshan and her.
She was sitting there with her $200,000 watch on. Woo. So,
I did a couple deep searches because I wanted to find out what 1 crore equals in terms of what
it's $100,000, right?
Yeah, it's $120,000. So 1 crore in India is 120,000 USD dollars. And I don't know if this is correct, but Hrithik Roshan is worth 3,000 crores, which is about $360 million. Oh,
okay. Damn. So all right.
I think that goes a long way in India.
Yeah. Also, I'm not surprised when you look at their giant ass mansion, which was beautiful and like fully manicured to the T. And also, him and his dad had like a covered porch that they were doing push-ups on, competing with each other. And his dad's like still doing push-ups. It's like, damn, okay.
You know how hard it is to body weight push-up? He's 76, I think, the dad. And he's a cancer survivor. And he was shot by the mob.
That's crazy.
This guy's been through everything, and he's doing push-ups in this obviously multi-million-dollar mansion in Mumbai. It looked like LA, by the way, right?
Yeah, it did.
Because they had a view with the valleys. I am not certain of what the topography is in Mumbai, but it looked like LA. It might have been LA. I don't think it was LA.
I don't think it was LA. I think you can find that kind of topography there if you're rich enough,
Yeah. You can find anything because rich people in India all know each other, it seems. Like that's kind of what the vibe was here. Everybody was hitting up the Roshans in the 70s and 80s. But then the brothers do say they felt like they were getting taken advantage of because everybody wanted to work with them because they made hit after hit. But it seems like they didn't get financially secure until like late 80s, mid 90s, which is quite a while.
Even Hrithik Roshan talks about being a kid and like praying that his dad becomes successful, which was really interesting because you think, because he's like in his early 50s and you just assume the like level of success they've attained now. You just assume that they must have had this for decades and decades, but I think it's only been since probably the 80s or 90s, which makes sense because some of his real hit films I kind of remember from when I was a really young child and I was born in the like mid 80s. So For example, they talked about Khun Bari Mang, which was a domestic violence story, which I'm not sure exactly what year that came out, but it was definitely like late 80s to early 90s. Because I remember my older sister talking about that with my parents about how like this is such a crazy story that it's like a domestic violence movie. And then we watched it all together, and it's really, really interesting. And they talk about that in this series of how he really had to talk to some folks and be like, do you think that this movie will work? And they said because of the way he emotionally justifies and develops the characters, that it would work. But it's just interesting because basically in the plot, this woman's husband's abusive and he ends
Mhm.
up pushing her into this lagoon where
Yeah.
there's like an alligator. I don't know the difference between an alligator and a crocodile. So it's one of those, and it bites her and she gets injured and her face gets partially disfigured, and then eventually she gets like plastic surgery and she becomes like beautiful again, and then she ends up killing him in the end, which is wild to think about, that there was like an Indian movie with this trajectory back in late 80s early 90s.
Yeah. They need to make that movie today in India. It
They need
goes
to
to
do a
show these
remake.
guys, they need a remake and they need to release
Yeah.
it every Friday. Every Friday. Release the same movie in a different sort of way. But that's a great point. Going back to the first episode, the songs that Roshan Saab was creating, they've forever been embedded into Indian media and Indian society.
Yeah.
However, a lot of the themes that they were discussing, we can't even talk about that stuff today in real
Yeah.
life. Like it's off limits, forbidden fruit. We can't touch it. But back then, they're talking about love. They're talking
Yeah.
about emotion. They're talking about like purity of love. They were talking about different kinds of love, like short,
Mhm.
long term, and they're all in the lyrics. So the movie that you referenced, I think, came out in the late 80s.
Okay.
Even before that, Julie, listen to this description. Julie is a 1975 Indian Hindi language romantic drama film. It depicts restrictive social conventions regarding interreligion marriage and unwed motherhood in India. Julie, played by Lakshmi, and she plays a Christian Anglo Indian mixed girl with a loving but alcoholic father. She falls in love with her best friend and she ends up getting pregnant as they consummate that relationship. And then it goes from there. The mother tells Julie to get an abortion, but Ruby Auntie comes out of nowhere and she's a devout Christian and she talks her out of it. A devout Christian in 1975 in India talks Julie out of getting an abortion. And then Julie is sent
Wow.
away. She has the baby in secret. The rest of the family is told that Julie got a job. This is starting to sound really, really familiar about other things we've talked about before, right?
यही बात न भूली जूली I love you
भूल गई सब कुछ याद नहीं अब कुछ
When
Damn,
Julie
yeah.
finally returns home, the father has already passed away. She's the primary breadwinner. Later, she runs into Shashi, who's the boy who thought that he never had a baby. He
Oh,
then
wow.
asks to marry her, but then the mother objects to the marriage because Julie's of different faith. And then
Wow.
the film ends with the mother offering full blessings to the young couple. So it is like an end scene where everyone's happy. But think about everything I just talked about.
That's
Like,
actually so
it's
progressive.
crazy.
Yeah.
1975 movie called Julie. So
Yeah.
this was created by the songs in this movie was from Rajesh Roshan, who was Roshan Saab's second son.
Yeah. You know, it's crazy because I feel like Bollywood from when I was a kid is sort of this like lame, super lovey dovey, like just about a cheesy love story that usually involves some classism and that kind of thing. But I feel like that must have just been an era. Like, I think that was just like the 90s and early 2000s, because I feel like there was some real substantive stuff before that in the 80s and 70s. And then definitely after that, there's been a lot of interesting themed and unique themed stories.
Yeah. And the movies that we're talking about today, we're more talking about the music when we talk about at least Rajesh Roshan. He's the musical composer, musical director for all these movies. And of course, in Bollywood, cinematography is important, but choreography and the music is arguably more important. It keeps everybody
Yeah.
sort of like in a community in India. Everybody sings it. all these songs become super famous. It makes the actors world famous. So the music is quite important. They do show screenwriters throughout the Roshans, but the dialogue in Indian movies isn't the best. It is really the music and
Yeah,
the cinematography and the choreography. It's just usually a wild ass scene.
they're all like musical type of movies, right? And they are super interesting and fun. I mean, I remember, being a teenager and seeing Desi kids, and they would just be singing these wild ass suggestive Bollywood songs, and they're like 6 or 7, and talking about like, this girl like belly dancing, shaking her hips. I'm thinking of this song called Sheila Ki Javani, and people will be singing that, like 6-year-olds, and you're just like, dude, you're from a conservative family, but that's cool.
That is
Like,
what's cool.
yeah,
Like what
like
else is cool in our culture other than singing and dancing? Probably that
it's
could
just
be
so
taken as like a
yeah,
sin or some, not even a sin, but conservative people don't do that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's what we're allowed to do.
yeah. It's just so funny though, because no matter how conservative your family is, you could probably get away with singing some wild ass Bollywood shit, man.
Oh, totally. I
Yeah.
remember. So my sister got married about 20 years back in
Hmm.
California, in Northern California. We had our cousins fly out from East Coast, but they're from Pakistan. They had only been in the United States for a handful of years at that time. They come out, and when you get together with your family, there's a lot of singing and dancing, like we just talked about. So my cousins directly from Virginia, but coming from Pakistan. This was in 2001 or 2 or 3, and Hrithik Roshan's first movie with that song Ik Pal Ka Jeena. It was
Yeah.
so popular. It has like that dance move, right? Exactly. That's
Yeah.
it. It's so
Yeah.
easy to recognize.
एक पल का जीना फिर तो है जाना तोहफा क्या लेके जाइए दिल ये बताना खाली हाथ आए थे हम खाली हाथ जाएंगे
My cousin and his mom, my aunt, was like yelling at him because he couldn't get the moves right. And she was just like, no, that's not how Hrithik does it. And he's like trying to get the moves right in our small living room. I'm like, dude, this guy is not going to become world famous. Maybe he is, but I didn't know what the intent was for her to be so specific and Tiger Mom about that dance that he was doing. And now I kind of realize it's just because it was a phenomenon and
Yeah.
everyone had to do it so correctly. So I'm going to be very honest right now. I'm always honest on this podcast, by the way, listeners. I didn't know who Hrithik Roshan was until I watched this documentary.
What? I knew who Hrithik Roshan was at the time
I was
that
going to
movie
tell
came
you.
out.
I'm sorry, Shabnam. I was going to tell you the last week, but I thought I would just drop it on the podcast to get your reaction. I didn't know who Hrithik Roshan was.
Crazy.
I'm sorry, but now I know because I've seen half these movies that we're talking about.
Okay, this is funny, but like I saw that when it came out and I was like,
Mhm.
okay, he's hot. He's definitely in shape. He can dance. He was a little too good at dancing for me. Like he's a little too pretty boyish, not my type. Not that like he's gonna give me a chance or something and I'm gonna reject him, but I'm just saying, not my like I remember thinking this as whatever I was, like 15 or something. I remember being like, he's a little too pretty boy. That's what I
Yeah.
thought to myself. But I was like, it's fun to watch, but not my type.
I mean, he's definitely a pretty boy. I mean, he's beyond a pretty boy. He's also super well spoken. He loves his
Yeah.
dad. It's like he's kind of like a perfect man. And I should say here, the Roshans is produced by the Roshan family. So there's not
Yeah.
going to be anything negative in what we're discussing today. There is like some Me Too drama that the Roshans were involved in, and there's other suggestive
damn,
things
I
that have
didn't know
happened
that.
in the past, but I don't have the details, and the websites that I looked at, I wasn't necessarily sure if this stuff was true. So I don't know how much we want to talk about it, but hey, if you're in the eye of a country that large that takes cinematic media so seriously, in 77 years this family's been in the public eye, right? Or 70, sorry, I
Yeah.
should say 77 years. I think India has been a country and for 60 years they've been in the eye of India, so something's bound to happen negative. But
Yeah.
he already got shot by the mob, right? So that was bad enough.
Yeah, so that was Rakesh Roshan. He gets shot by the mob after Hrithik's big movie in his Iqbal Ka Jeena song, right? It's this huge tragedy. They don't know like what's going to happen to him, and there's an award show a few days after that. Thankfully, he recovers and he's able to fully move on and be healthy. And Hrithik Roshan kind of says at the award show that their family's been through a lot, but he ends up winning too. So it's sort of this like bittersweet time for them where they have these like super high highs and super low lows. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Sometimes
and
life works
also
like
we
that,
should,
I guess.
hey, I mean, life's not going to be perfect, right? And Shah Rukh
Yeah.
Khan actually references it in the series. He literally says you can't have a perfect life, but for what they've been through, what they've accomplished, he doesn't call it perfection. He says you can't have it, but he does pretty much say they have almost the perfect life.
Yeah.
But with cancer and getting shot, and the dad dies early, right? He dies in 1967, so none of the
Yeah.
grandchildren actually grow up with Roshan Saab, the patriarch.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have to give a moment to all of the star power in this movie. Madhuri
Yeah.
Dixit, Priyanka Chopra, Shah Rukh Khan, these like famous Bollywood A-listers, like top A-listers, are all in this movie talking about how this family is so amazing, how each of them individually are so extraordinary in their art. And Priyanka Chopra and Madhuri Dixit both said that they really respected Rakesh as a director because he also had a previous acting history. He started out as an actor, but didn't seem to really get traction there. And so he pivoted to being a director, and that's where he really shined. But they said they always took what he said a little more seriously because he had that background and he knew what it was like to be in their shoes. So that was pretty interesting to hear.
Yeah, and they said he was a perfectionist as well. Like his schedule and his consistency is what made the films. They said he never had any flops, but I looked it up. He had plenty of flops, but in the actual series, they're like everything was a hit, first class. Of course, they made generational wealth, but he was prolific. And I think if you're that prolific and that many films that you make, they can't all be 100% on
Yeah.
Rotten Tomatoes, right? So,
Right.
but the movies he did make, like the first one that we discussed is Kahona Pyar Hai, which means say it, it's love, or I'm in love.
Yeah.
I guess you
Yeah.
can't say I'm in love, so it literally just translates to it's love.
Say
But I
say
think
it say it's love or something, I guess.
say it's love. So I don't know how
Yeah.
you say I love you to somebody in India, but this was a love film. It came out in 2000 and it took Hrithik Roshan to the top, as we're discussing.
Yeah, but let's talk about Karan Arjun.
Let's talk about that first. Yeah.
Okay, so before we get into the movie that you're talking about, we see how Rakesh Roshan made a movie called Karan Arjun, which is about twins. And it's crazy because it's like a Bollywood Western style movie. And it's starring two huge A-listers, Shah Rukh Khan and Salman Khan. And they're supposed to be twins. And it's this Western style movie. I remember watching it when I was a kid. It's got a lot of action. These two, like I said, huge A-listers. Shah Rukh Khan is in this documentary and he talks about how basically they were really big assholes to Rakesh Roshan. They were like, we don't want to play the roles like this. We want to switch roles and we don't want to say these lines. We want to say other lines. And then you see one of the other directors going, to put it in film terms, they really harassed him. And I was like, yeah, they were assholes, basically. So, and he admits it and he says that, you know, he apologized in the future. And obviously they've like grown up from this. This is like 30 years ago at this point. But that was a really cool movie too. And just the fact that he thought to do a Bollywood Western and that it worked because he worked in some traditional elements was really interesting too.
And he does this across all genres. So that one's a Bollywood Western. Then he's done several action films. He's done sort of like a Marvel superhero series called Krish. And the one, and then he's also done very melodramatic alien drama
E.T.
with a
style.
child. E.T. style with a child played by Hrithik Roshan as an adult. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Like I did watch a little bit of it. He's a great actor. I was super prepared and pumped to come here and bash the shit out of him because I don't know if you've seen Tropic Thunder with Ben Stiller.
Yeah.
Simple Jack.
Yeah.
Simple Jack in the movie, he plays a mentally challenged boy that ends up becoming something, and they lampoon him in the movie. It's a fake movie, but then
Yeah.
he gets kidnapped by Vietnamese gangsters who are producing heroin, and they make him do Simple Jack every day as a theatrical artist in poppy fields. But the idea of Tropic Thunder was to make fun of Ben Stiller for ever taking the role as Simple Jack, because they were like, you never
Yeah.
go full R word. You never go full
Yeah.
R word. And
Yeah.
the movie that we're about to discuss, and we'll play a clip from it, Hrithik Roshan plays a child who doesn't grow up because he ends up in some extraterrestrial land, and he continues to get bigger like Robin Williams from Jack, but his mind never develops. But he does
Yeah.
an amazing job. I can't believe how well he did. I don't know if you've seen the full
Yeah.
movie.
I did, but it was many, many years ago. So it's called Koi Mil Gaya, and it's the first science fiction movie in Bollywood. And he does such a wonderful job of playing like a childlike person with childlike emotions in a grown body. And personal story, one of my dad's sisters had a thyroid gland problem. She has since passed, but she was like this. She basically was always about 9 years old psychologically, mentally, but she lived till she was probably like 70 something, and she was always like this. She was in her 50s or whatever, and there would be like a song come on and she'd start dancing in the middle of like the family and stuff. It was cute, but like he played a character like this so well. It was really amazing to see. And there's a really cool song in that movie called Idhar Chala Main Udhar Chali. And it's a really beautiful song where they kind of use harnesses to bring the fantasy element of them kind of floating at times during the dance. And his co-star Preeti Zinta, she's like, it's one of the sweetest songs ever because it's not super sexual. It's more just like platonic. And it was really, really cool to see.
इधर चली मैं उधर चली जाने कहाँ मैं किधर चली अरे फिसल गई ले तेरे संग हो चली
इधर चला मैं उधर चला जाने कहाँ मैं किधर चला अरे फिसल गया.
That's a great scene. I did rewatch that, and it kind of goes to what we were saying in the beginning of the episode. All Indian films were based around some sort of romance or love, but Rakesh Roshan was able to go beyond the one thing that I guess we're obsessed with, love and marriage. But yeah, there was no love involved at all. She says it wasn't super sexual, but she didn't even have to say that. It was a very G-rated singing in the rain sort of dance, singing in the rain, very Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything PG about it as well. Keep in mind, he's
anything
a grown
PG
man. PG is parental guidance. G
you're
no
saying it's like
guidance.
I get it.
Yeah,
I got it. Okay.
I don't know what parental guidance there'd be. I mean, unless a kid is scared of aliens, because the alien is hilarious in the movie.
Yeah.
Like the actual alien looks like a 20-year-old ET. Like, but so they brought in like special effects people from outside India to help with that alien that they created in 2003. But it's a great movie. I'm trying to figure out like what movie I want to watch out of this series, because now I'm pretty nostalgic about everything we're discussing.
Yeah. I don't know. I might want to watch that one, or the other one that we were touching on, the other superhero fantasy one called Krish. That one looks really good too. Yeah.
I've not seen those.
Yeah. So that one was the one that Hrithik Roshan acted in right after Koi Mil Gaya. So Krish was about the superhero, but it's also really steeped in tradition. And Rajesh Roshan did a really good job of keeping it authentic and traditional elements, but still having it be modern and really likable and accessible to the masses. So that's really cool. Like, I feel like that's such an interesting skill to have, you know? I think that's amazing. That's how people in entertainment are successful.
I mean, how would Marvel implement a dance number and song numbers? It would only be Bollywood. And the reason why I know this is because in The Eternals, which is a Marvel movie, they had to get Kumail Nanjiani to play a Bollywood actor and have a 20-minute dance scene. So there is no way for any movies in the entire world to put in song and dance numbers without taking something from India and Bollywood. There's just no way. There's no other examples. And if there's any other examples, they're like musicals or something. But specifically speaking, this guy turned Marvel, Bollywood, romance, hey, mentally challenged kid who knows aliens. It doesn't matter what it was. He was able to successfully make films with Indian Bollywood dance numbers. It just blows my
Yeah.
mind.
Even movies about domestic violence.
Yeah, and then the
Yeah.
like J-Lo, she comes and kills her husband at the end of Enough, right? He made that film.
Yeah.
He made it 20 years before she did. So
Yeah, that's so
maybe
true.
not 20 years,
Yeah.
but like 6 years before Enough came out, where J-Lo, that's a great movie too, by the way. Go J-Lo.
Yeah.
Killing off her abusive ex-husband as well. But yeah, this guy touches every sort of film. So what do you think is more important in a film? I know we keep going back and forth, but is it the music, or is it like the hotness of the actors? Because let's be real, Bollywood actors are always hot. I'm talking
Yeah.
about the love interests, not like the uncles and aunties that play their
Yeah.
antagonists.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I feel like for Bollywood films, you really can't have it without the dance numbers, without the music. Those are the things that carry the movies, right? Whereas in Hollywood, yeah, you can have like really great movies where the songs are not really notable to the average person. Even if they're beautifully composed, they're not like what you associate automatically with the movie. But in Bollywood, 100%, the music is always the main thing you associate with the movie.
Yeah, and then his newest film, Hrithik Roshan, I should say, it's called Fighter, where he plays like this
interesting.
crazy action film, and there's still going to be Bollywood songs in it, I'm assuming. I don't think it's
Yeah.
released yet, but maybe got released last year, but it's just kind of crazy. Also, Rakesh Roshan makes a great point in the 4th episode. He wants to make films that can be viewed by anybody anywhere around the world. And
Yeah.
he makes a great point about, like, I think he's like actually touching on like indie films out of the US, how they're so specific and niche. And of course, they don't get mass appeal unless it's like a Juno kind of film that has a broad topic where the teenager gets pregnant. It was written by that stripper, so it became super famous. But he's trying to say, like, movies should be big spectacles with music, with themes of love, despair, marriage, whatever it might be, conflict.
Yeah.
If it's just sort of like an indie film with one storyline, it's not going to get that many viewers. And he's totally correct. So
Interesting.
we need to go big. We need to go big often.
Yeah. Well,
Sorry.
it's fine. I was going to say that's what she said, but I already said that once in this episode, so I don't know. Anyway, but like in the Krish movie, one of the crazy things about it is he did his own stunts, right?
So in the movie, in Krish, he does his own stunts. Within the Roshans, there's a pretty crazy scene where they preface it with saying he had a curved spine, Hrithik Roshan himself, when he was growing up. So if you see his body today, he doesn't have any curved spine at all. So his dad said that he went through extreme effort, read a bunch of exercise books, and basically within a year straightened out his spine. But when they're making Krish, doesn't he get into a pretty bad accident? Like, I'm surprised they didn't like expand on that, because it looked pretty fucking scary when he tries his own stunts.
Yeah, he's like jumping from one building to the other with a harness on, and the harness just breaks and he just free falls basically. But luckily there's a street vendor below with like a canopy, and so he gets caught in the canopy and he's like totally fine, and not a scratch on him. And but his dad's the director of the movie, so his dad's like freaks out for a while, and he lets the crew know like, okay, he's fine. And then his dad's like, okay, let's take a break and like call it a day. And he's like, no, because if you do that, then this fear will stick with me. So he's like, let's keep going. And he basically got right back up there and did it again. But he definitely had this huge fear, but because he did it so quickly after his fall, he was able to overcome it and move on from it pretty fast. But I was like, damn, that is insane. The fact that you free fall but then onto a canopy, like, what are the chances?
Yeah, just the fact he was doing his own stunt, because you see him fly through the air in the documentary. I don't think anybody, maybe Tom Cruise, would do that stunt. I don't think there's any American actors in Hollywood that would do that stunt. He's free flying through the air with 2 cables, and in the previous shot the cable rips and he almost dies. So I don't see anybody in Hollywood doing that stunt. I know this is
who
probably
would do that?
Who?
Capiche would do it.
Shout out Capiche. Hey, everybody.
Yeah,
We
hey,
did.
Capiche.
This is a great segue, and I apologize, Capiche. Capiche is a live action stunt person. He's practicing all the time. We interview him in a previous episode, Welcome to Plathville. He is a side star on that show. So shout out Capiche Moria.
In the reality world, we call that friend of.
Capiche Moria is a friend of the show. Shout out Capiche.
Nice. And then we also see Priyanka. Priyanka's like, she'd never worked in a superhero movie before either. And that was one of her movies early on in her career. And so she was like, this was so exciting. It was like our own homegrown desi superhero. I was like, there you go.
And this is before the first Marvel movie. So I think first Marvel movie was Iron Man itself, the solo film. It came out in 2008. And Krish came out in 2006. So good for India. Always being ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And, all credit to these filmmakers. There was no internet. They weren't like straight up ripping stuff off. Actually, let me take that back. They ripped off so much stuff.
Yeah, they ripped off stuff, and they've been ripped off of. I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know who's ahead at this point. So, that is what it is. And there was internet in 2006. It just wasn't that great.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm more discussing like these guys made crazy ass films like Superman, Indian Superman in 1982, and Spider-Man in 1984. It wasn't Rakesh and Rajesh, but it was their buddies. So they've been making spin-offs of Hollywood type films for a long time.
Yeah.
I think all art is sort of built upon each other, though, because it's like, say you wanted to make a song today, you would have to sample. Every musical note has already been recorded.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can make a complete unique song unless you just use like rocks and pans and pill bottles to make the beat.
Yeah. Maybe some AI tool will make new instruments or new sounds or something. Who knows? Then we learn that, like you mentioned earlier, Rakesh apparently gets really bad tongue cancer. And he gets diagnosed with this, and he's basically telling his family, like, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. He puts like a brave face on, even though they know that it's a really rough diagnosis. But it's funny because they cut to Hrithik, and Hrithik goes, my dad had so much discipline, and discipline is different than motivation. Like, discipline is something you do when you're not motivated. And he had so much discipline with cancer. And then he goes, boom, cancer gone. That's magic. And I'm like, okay, this is some weird delusional famous people. I love famous people BS because it's like you're rich and you have access to all kinds of resources, surgery, medication, everything. That's probably what helped your dad. And I'm sure he has a good positive attitude, but I'm sure a lot of people with a lack of resources would have a lot more positive attitude if they had unlimited money to pay for their treatment. So that's my little corner of bitching at the elite class.
Hey, listeners know me, and if there was enough for me to say that these guys are not all there in terms of humility, then I would say it. But again, I understand this was produced by the Roshans, so it's in a very positive light. But he does seem like a very genuine person, Hrithik Roshan.
Yeah.
And I can't say that he's not, and I can't say that he is, because it's all controlled by Netflix and or the media. It does seem like positive vibes could have gotten his dad out of it. And his dad is extremely disciplined. And I sort of agree. If you're going to do something the same day and it doesn't matter what the circumstances are or what the situation is that you maybe can't complete it, if you continue to do it, that does in itself become your life. So if you wake up every day
the motivation.
and you're, if you're writing for an hour every morning, that does become your life. He said he had so much discipline that whatever he was doing every day to become a successful movie director, producer, actor, whatever he wanted to be successful at, he just converted all that to positive energy to beat cancer. And who knows, maybe it worked. Dude's not that old. He's 77 now. He looks great. He's doing fucking push-ups.
Yeah. No, and I don't mean to minimize that. Like, I do think obviously having a very strong mentality and a disciplined mind, and then also just taking that discipline and focusing it on specific things, right? Like, okay, I'm going to eat these certain things that are good for me, in my health condition, and do these certain exercises and sleep this much and whatever, like that level of discipline obviously is going to help you. So I'm not knocking that at all. I'm just saying, like, it was a little weird the way.
It's always circumstance.
Yeah. But, they are extraordinary. So there's like literally multi-generations of the same family where each person is individually really extraordinary. And that is extremely unusual, for like 3 generations. And so we see Hrithik Roshan's 2 sons, and Hrithik Roshan talking about how he doesn't want to burden them with legacy. But how could they not be? I mean, that's a lot of pressure.
They're already playing Wonderwall by Oasis together in the final scene, and they're pretty good because my daughter's playing that right now too. I agree with his parenting style. He says to like listen to what I'm saying, like go out and build your own legacy, but also don't listen to what I'm saying because you have to build your own legacy. So I don't see him as the kind of dad that's going to force those kids to become actors, but let's be real, they're going to become actors because they're just going to become actors. Like, there's a very solid chance that one of those 2 boys takes that route. Yeah.
I mean, it's the family business, right? It's pretty difficult to get away from that. I mean, I ended up working in tech, and like we didn't fall that far from our parents.
Hey, we do this now, though. So we do this now.
Yeah,
it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's a little bit different because we still made them happy, and now we're doing what we want to do.
Yeah, we had to take the long route. Imagine starting this podcast in 2008 when Joe Rogan started his. Imagine we could have been but famous. We weren't allowed to do that. Like, we could have been famous. Me and you.
Yeah, but who knows?
Maybe we still will.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we'll be the Desi Joe Rogans in 10 years. Who knows?
Yeah. I don't think I have any weird opinions. You know what? Hey, the more I talk, probably the weirder I get. So,
and I don't know that I want to aspire to be Joe Rogan. And nothing else besides the financial part.
Yeah, give me that money. Give me that crore. Give me that 10. I'll take 10 crore.
Yeah,
I don't need 3,000 like Hrithik Roshan. I don't need that many crore.
Yeah,
but just a few hundred.
Well, Hrithik Roshan's name, in case our listeners don't know, starts with an H, and he has 2 sons named Rihan and Ridan, and
what do those start with?
Those start with silent H's. It's like the Kardashians, but Desis with H's.
A Shabnam.
So there you go. So they're the legacy family of Bollywood.
Hey, if I'm wrong today, please email us at shyafterdark@shyafterdark.com. I am feeling positive. I have good vibes about this family. I think they are genuine, and I'm probably completely incorrect.
We don't actually know that much about this.
I want to be good. I want them to be the people that they're showing themselves to be in the documentary because they love everyone. And even the things that they said they did wrong, like Rajesh Roshan says, I smoked too much, I drank too much, and I became a burden to my wife. And then they cut to the wife, and then you can see the tears in her eyes. So whatever story that is, they don't say what happened, but you don't become this rich and famous through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And they reference partying a lot. A lot. They're like, after every movie, we had a huge party. Even the original Roshan Saab, he was having parties too. So I think they're good people. I hope they're good people. I sound like a simp for the Roshans, but hey, you guys are cool. Hrithik,
well,
if you're listening,
Hrithik,
come on.
Seriously, yeah. Hell yeah.
But shirt off and everything.
Oh yeah. Dude, check out the episode art if you haven't, guys, because there is a really hot picture of Hrithik Roshan. I was totally trying to find a thirst trap picture, and I think I did. So check that out.
And that episode art will be on our Substack. It's going to be on our Apple. It's going to be on our Spotify. Everyone check Chai After Dark everywhere.
Yeah. And don't forget to rate us 5 stars. Okay. 5 stars, no less, because we have brown dads and they're not going to settle for anything less than 5 stars. And also, this was a really nostalgic one for us. So come say hi, write us a review, tell us how much you loved it, and tell us if we said something wrong. Tell us that too, but still give us 5 stars though.
Can I ask you a favor, Shabnam?
What?
Can we close this out with Kaho Na Pyar Hai? Or do you
Yeah.
want to do the jingle?
No, let's do Kaho Na Pyar Hai.
There we go.
Na Pyar Hai. Kaho Na Pyar
Tin, 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 tin. I love famous people. Hey, Roshans, love y'all.
Hai. Love you.
See you later. Thanks, everyone.